Hey there. It's me, Eden. If you are new to the channel, then please subscribe to my channel and visit my Patreon page for early access, link in the comment, thanks. With Dad and Aunt Jessica gone, the house seemed to have taken on an incredible feeling of emptiness. This was very strange since we were only returning to the normal family setting that we were accustomed to prior to July. Carol, Mom, and I went upstairs to organize our things for our return to school tomorrow. Mom looked first through my closet, and then went through Carol's closet, to organize several outfits for me. When I saw what she had selected, I protested. Mom, why do I have to wear these? It's only school. Crystal, we've been through this before. You never know who is going to see you and you have to look your best at all times. Besides, this is your first day at a new school and you'll want to make an impression. It's the type of impression that I'm going to make that concerns me. That skirt is one of the skirts that you had Barbara alter. It's so tight that I can barely walk in it. And the blouse is so low cut that you can see the entire tops of my breasts. Don't exaggerate, dear. It's not ladylike. The clothes are perfect for your first day. You only get one chance to make a good first impression. You want to be noticed, and with these clothes you'll definitely stand out. Stick out is more like it. Carol started laughing and said, "It's all right, cries. I'll wear something sexy also. After all, I can't have my little sister showing me up on the first day of school. Come on, let's go do our nails." Carol and I went into her bedroom while Mom went to her own bedroom to prepare her things for tomorrow. Carol and I spent the next couple of hours talking and giving each other manicures and pedicures. And when we were done, we each had a set of fingernails that screamed to be noticed. If the clothes didn't attract attention, our hands surely would. We had gotten carried away and glued on extensions that extended at least 1.5 inches beyond the ends of our fingers. Then we shaped and filed them before putting on the decorative appliques. I had a stars and stripes look, while Carol's nails bore a star field effect. It wasn't until everything had dried that I realized I was almost helpless when it came to picking up anything small. It was going to take a lot of practice to be able to function normally with nails this long. Carol and I had a giggling fit as we practiced with the new nails. It had begun getting late, so we kissed goodnight and I went to my room to get ready for bed. I was more nervous about school tomorrow than I had ever been about appearing in the play or the TV series, and it was taking a real effort to appear nonchalant. The sun was just peeking over the horizon when I woke up, and I hurried to bathe before Carol got up. When I was finished, I knocked on her door to signal that the tub was available, and, as if in answer to my knock, she opened the door and walked in. The tub had barely finished emptying when she closed the drain and began running fresh water in. She was pouring in the bath oils when I walked into my bedroom to begin getting dressed. I dropped the bath towel that I had wrapped around my body and pulled on a pair of panties. My padded panty girdle was the first step towards creating the illusion of my curvaceous body, and I also put on my bra to give me a little helping support and relieve the strain on my chest. Even the 36C bras had begun to feel tight lately. After putting on a chemise, I wrapped my corset around my body, fastened the busk, and did my best to tighten the lacing, but I knew that I could never tighten it to the point that I needed in order to fit into the blouse that Mom had selected for me. Since I would have to wait for Carol before I could finish getting dressed, I sat at my makeup table and began working on my face and hair. I had completed most of my makeup and had put my hair up into a ponytail before Carol came in to help me with my corset. When she had laced me down for the first time, she said, "Oh, cries, a ponytail will be okay for tomorrow, but today calls for something special." Something special was a French braid, and when she was done, she laced me down again and then helped me to get dressed. As I had told Mom, the blouse was so tight in the chest that I stuck up out of it, and the skirt was so tight that I could barely get into it. I definitely couldn't bend over to put on my shoes, so Carol had to put them on my feet and buckle the ankle strap. At least they weren't the usual 4-inch heels. Mom was allowing me to wear 3-inch heels because I was only going to be in school today. I stood in front of my full-length mirror and sighed as I looked at myself. I would be lucky if I got through this day without having somebody jam $50 into my hand and try to drag me behind the nearest desk. Carol rushed off to get dressed when I was finished, and I put on my lipstick, earrings, watch, bracelets, and a necklace before checking my face again and then going into her room. True to her word, she was wearing one of the tightest dresses that I had seen her wear since school had let out for the summer. I did her hair like she had done mine, and then she worked on her face as I sat on her bed and talked with her. Carol, do you think that Mom is being ridiculous about my clothes? No, not ridiculous. Maybe just a little bit excessive. You do look great. Every guy in school is going to be drooling when he sees you looking like that. That's what I mean. I don't want every guy in school chasing after me with the idea that he's going to get me into bed. Face it, cries, that's the reason that every high school guy chases a girl. You don't think that they're looking for friendship and lasting relationships, do you? I giggled. No, but that's not what I mean. I just don't want everybody to get the idea that I'm a whore that's going to jump into the sack on every date. You can't stop people from talking. There are going to be a lot of jealous girls in school after today. Everyone that catches her boyfriend looking at you is going to be jealous, as if that were the only reason for being jealous. What do you mean the only reason for being jealous? Carol stopped working on her face and turned to look at me. She just stared at me for a few seconds before saying, "Sis, look at yourself. You're beautiful. You're talented. And you're famous. Or at least you're on your way to becoming famous, and you're definitely already famous in this town. It's only natural that every girl in school is going to be jealous." I looked at her for a few seconds before saying in a hushed tone, "Are you jealous of me, Carol?" She stood up and came over to the bed, extending her hand to me. When I took it, she pulled slightly and I stood up. Wrapping her arms around me, she hugged me tightly. "Yes, I guess that I am a little. But I love you and I'm happy for your success. I also realize that I will benefit from your talent and accomplishments. I know that you are enduring these clothes so that your acting career will bloom, and that your career will provide the means for us to go to a good college. You're doing it for both of us, and I love you all the more for that." She squeezed me hard one more time before stepping back. "Don't you worry about how people at school will treat you. I'll be there to help my little sister, and you'll have a lot of friends around you also." Mom entered after knocking on the door. "Come on, girls. We only have a few minutes to have breakfast before we have to leave." Carol said, "Okay, Mom." I hurried to my room, grabbed my purse, sweater, and school notebook and walked down to the kitchen, taking extra care on the stairs because of the tight skirt and heels. Mom had made some toast and told me to sit down at the table. As I did, she brought me a glass of orange juice. Carol came in, sat also, and Mom brought her a glass of juice, before sitting down with us. "Girls, since this is Crystal's first day, things may be a little difficult for her. Carol, I know that you will be caught up in the excitement of being back with your friends, but please take extra care to help your sister today." "Okay, Mom. I will." "Crystal, if you have any problems, just come to the school office. It's going to be absolutely crazy there today, so just take a seat and I will get to you as quickly as I can. Okay, Mom. Good, now we have to get going so that we aren't late. We put our juice glasses in the sink and left the kitchen. Carol and I both checked our appearance in the mirror near the front door and then picked up our things and walked outside. It was a beautiful, late summer morning and the early sun was casting long shadows everywhere. Mom came out and we all climbed into the car for our ride to the high school. Mom parked in her assigned spot in the faculty lot right next to the school and she went to the office while Carol and I hung out near the front entrance. It was still very early and no other students had arrived yet. Over the next half-hour kids began to arrive at an ever-increasing rate. Heather and Sherry arrived on the school bus and worked their way over to where we were standing. Several other girls joined us and Carol went through the motions of introducing us. Actually, I already knew them, as I did most of the kids in high school, but that was as Carrie. As Crystal, I had to meet them all over again, unless we had met during the summer. By the time that the first bell rang, we had a crowd of perhaps 20 girls in our group. Everyone was very friendly, but I knew that they were constantly appraising everything that I said or did. Some of the other girls had dressed very sexy today, but most just looked like average teenagers, and a few looked like complete slobs. There were also a few groups that dressed in their own far-out looks, such as the goths, the freaks, and the punks. We began to file into the school, heading for our homerooms, so that we could suffer through the annual welcome back speech by the principal. I don't think that anyone noticed that I knew exactly where I was going, because of the general melee of the first day. Most had received their class assignments in the mail this past week, and I knew that Mom would be busy, along with the rest of the office staff, handing out replacement schedules to kids that hadn't received theirs, or who had simply forgotten it and left it at home. As Carrie, I would normally have raced to my homeroom in order to get a seat near the back of the room, but I couldn't race anywhere dressed as I was. When I did get to the room, most of the seats were already taken, so I wound up sitting in the front row. Mr. Rosenberg, the math teacher who functioned as our homeroom teacher, came in just as the bell sounded. He closed the door and walked to his desk, dropping his books noisily on its surface. "Okay, settle down people," he said as he dug through a folder. "Let's get attendance out of the way." He began to read names from his list and kids would acknowledge their presence. When he got to a name that didn't bring a response, he looked around for the first time. As he scanned the class, his eyes lingered on me for several seconds before he returned to his list, marked it, and continued on. When he read my name, he didn't even wait for a response. He just continued on to the next name on his list until he had finished. Then he sat at his desk working on the form. When he was done, he said, "Okay, the seats that you are presently in will be your assigned seats for the year. If that seat is ever empty, you will be marked as absent." A chorus of groans filled the room, to which Mr. Rosenberg responded, "This is a classroom. You'll do your socializing outside." As the groans died down, the principal's voice came over the loudspeaker and he began his address. By the end of his speech, several students were sleeping on their desks, or at least appeared to be sleeping. The speech had run over into the first period, but that was okay, on the first day of school, since nothing of significance would be covered today anyway. The bell sounded and everyone got up to head for his or her first class. Mr. Rosenberg said, "Miss Ramsey, would you stay for a minute, please?" I waited until the room was almost empty, then got up and stood in front of Mr. Rosenberg's desk. He said, "I just wanted to welcome you to our school. I attended your play this summer and I enjoyed it very much. I thought that your performance, in particular, was wonderful. Most remarkable for a beginning actress." Thank you, Mr. Rosenberg. It was a lot of fun. When is your TV series starting? In about 3 weeks, I think. I'm not even sure what channel it'll be on. We look forward to seeing it. Well, I'll see you back here for the second period. I see that your sister is waiting for you at the door. Okay, Mr. Rosenberg. As soon as I stepped out of the room, Carol said, "What's the matter?" "Nothing. He just wanted to welcome me to the school and tell me that he enjoyed the play this summer." Wow. Sounds like an almost automatic for his course. Don't be silly. He's not going to give me an A because he enjoyed my play. Maybe not, but you won't have to work as hard as you have had to work in the past to achieve it. Just smile at him, wiggle and jiggle a little, and let him get a good look at your legs during the school year. Rosie is a big-leg man. You'll get an A for sure. Here's your next classroom. I have to hurry to get to mine. See you at the end of the period. Okay, sis. Thanks. Carol hurried off to her class and I entered mine, which was chemistry. There were only 3 seats available, and 2 were right next to pranksters that I knew all too well from prior years, so I took the only other seat, which happened to be in the front row again. This time I didn't have to wait for attendance to be spotted. Mr. Douglas noticed me right from the start and made a point of telling the class how much he had enjoyed my performances. I thanked him, hoping that that would put an end to it, and indeed he turned his attention back to the class and took attendance. When he had finished, he had a couple of the boys pass out our textbooks, and for much of the rest of the period he read from the textbook as he stood almost directly in front of me. I was following along in my book, but I sensed that his eyes rarely left my chest because he made a number of mistakes, and I don't believe that he is that poor of a reader. I was thankful when the period ended, but Mr. Douglas stopped me before I could leave to ask about the TV series. I gave him the standard answers and he continued to make small talk until Carol showed up. There was no mistaking where his eyes were fixated as we spoke. I excused myself because I had to get to my next class, and hurried away. In the hall, Carol said, "That's 2 guaranteed A's if you play it right." I laughed. Did you see that? Of course. He couldn't take his eyes off your tits. Dougie has a thing for big tits. Well, back to Mr. Rosenberg for trigonometry. At least he didn't gawk at me. And he's not going to give me an A because of how I look. You'll see. You'll be the first to know if you are receiving better grades than you deserve. Carol left me at my classroom door and hurried off to her second period class. I took the same seat that I used for homeroom and began looking through my chemistry book, stopping to examine the periodic table of elements. Mr. Rosenberg came in and began shuffling papers on his desk. When the bell rang, he walked over and closed the door, then began calling attendance. Next, he oversaw the distribution of our math textbooks. Unlike Mr. Douglas, Mr. Rosenberg didn't stand over me and read. Instead, he sat at his desk and lectured. More than once I realized that he was staring at my legs. I just kept my legs crossed and let him enjoy himself as I pretended not to notice. I spent my time making notes of everything that he said. I had long ago figured out the universally known principle that when preparing papers, you use the exact same terminology that the teacher uses. This convinces the teacher that you are listening and understand the material because you talk in his, or her, language. To accomplish this, you must take very complete notes, or have an incredible memory. It helps to have both. When the bell rang, Mr. Rosenberg quickly assigned the first chapter as reading for tonight, and the class began to empty. He looked at me as I passed his desk and I smiled. He returned the smile and then very abruptly stopped and turned his attention to organizing his papers. Hallway locker assignments had been sent to each student's home with their schedules, and I located my locker, which had originally been assigned to Carrie. It was right outside Mr. Rosenberg's classroom and my homeroom. Fishing the envelope from my purse that contained the locker's combination, I entered the numbers and then pulled on the handle. The locker opened easily, which was a refreshing change from last year's locker, and I deposited my new books on the shelf. Then I waited just outside the classroom door for Carol to come. No one said anything to me, but I received a lot of stares, including some from guys that I had known as Carrie. When Carol arrived, we headed towards my third period class, English with Mrs. Abbott. Carol said, "Well, how did it go with Rosie?" "It was like you said." He spent the entire period staring at my legs. She giggled. "Just remember to always sit in the front row and you'll sail through his course." "Stop it, Carol. You know that that's not true." She laughed. "Okay, you won't sail through, but I bet that it helps." Sherry was coming the other way and we stopped to talk for a couple of minutes. We only had time to discuss where we would meet for lunch before we had to separate if we wanted to get to our classes on time. Carol's classroom was before mine and I told her that she didn't need to walk me to mine and then come back, so she went into her class and I continued on. Many of the students for Mrs. Abbott's class were still in the hallway as I worked my way through the crowd, and I had my choice of seats. I sat down 2 rows back in the center aisle. Several boys followed me in and took seats on both sides and behind me, but not one talked to me. I pretended to be busy with my notebook and never glanced in their direction. Mrs. Abbott came in then and the rest of the class followed her in and took seats. Please subscribe for the next part and visit my Patreon page for early access. Link in the comment. Thanks.